Welcome back to another episode of Fleshing It Out. I'm here with Rabbi Tzvi Freeman. Where are you currently, Rabbi Freeman?
Where am I from?
Where are you currently living?
I'm currently living in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, in Atlanta, Georgia. And Rabbi Freeman is a senior editor at Chabad.org, also the author of many books, including Wisdom to Heal the Earth and Bringing Heaven Down to Earth, which is basically a compilation of 365 meditations based on teachings from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Rabbi Freeman has also a very interesting take on, I think a very positive take on davening, on prayer, which we'd hope to get to during this conversation. Kind of meditation and prayer and how they work together. And maybe some insights into how we can approach davening from a more meaningful perspective. Rabbi Freeman, first, can you tell us a bit about, first let me hear about your guitar, because you saw my guitar in the background over there. And then
we can have it out to see who plays better.
Yeah, well, you have to be with my wife because I don't play. She plays.
Yeah. You gotta learn.
Yeah, I wish.
If you can't play music, how can you relate to God? You know, I don't get it.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's one of the same thing. It's just you're playing music. What's the universe? The universe is God's music, and we're just notes inside it. So I'm being poetic, but you need some form of creative expression, because God's a creator, right? So you're talking about davening, you want to relate to a creator. Well, if you've never created, how do you relate to a creator? Say, well, I created kids. Not really. Create, like you have an idea in your mind and you bring it out into reality, and then, wow, look what I brought into reality. Why are they doing that down there? You have to have some sort of affinity to be able to commiserate, at least, with the creator. Somehow. Empathy.
I feel
create any sort of creation, even if it's acting or poetry, something.
I think music has probably more of a connection with the spiritual realm, because it's kind of like it taps into somewhere within you that is deeper than really, especially if it's the music part of it, not the words part of it. That's kind of deeper than words. Words take on form and kind of limit any things that we want to express, or emotions or feelings. And music is something that gets past kind of that form, and I feel like touches something deeper. So music specifically, I see as like a kind of a spiritual undertaking sometimes.
The Frierdiker Rebbe, previous Rebbe, Yosef Yitzhak, so he talked about different types of languages, or aesius, ways of expression. So he said there's words you speak when you're speaking to somebody, and then there are words of thought, and then there's the language of music. So what's the difference? It says, in your mind, you already have thoughts in your mind. Most of us have some sort of narration going on in our mind. Although a lot of people deny it, they'll tell you, I never hear anything in my mind. But I think most of us have this humble jumble conversation going on inside our heads, language inside our heads, and it's just ourselves speaking to ourselves. So that reveals a lot to me. I can look at those words, that language, that discussion, narration going on in my head, and if I let it loose, it'll tell me what's going on inside me. I can go for a walk and just realize, oh, this is what's bothering me. So those type of words reveal myself to myself, but they don't tell anybody else anything. They're only to myself and not to anybody else. So then he says, but the words of speech, that reveals what you were thinking to somebody else. But when you look at those words of speech, you find yourself very frustrated. That's not it at all. It's just not it. So for yourself, it feels like you're hiding yourself behind these words. But somebody else hears those words, they're exposing you, revealing you. So that's the difference between the words of thought reveal to yourself and hide from others, whereas the words of speech reveal to others, but hide yourself. Because the language of music, he says, reveals yourself to yourself and to others. Just everything is open. It's all there. It's as though you could take whatever is inside you and share it there outside with everybody else. A total openness. So that's, of all the arts, really music is the most. Is it literature or is it music? The music we associate with Jews more than anything else.
You associate with Jews, you said?
Jews, yeah, music.
Well,
I mean, Jews are musicians, you know. Jews write, compose music, sing music.
Right.
Expected to sing.
I mean, one of the services in the temple in the Beis Hamikdash was the Levim, the Levites, standing on the steps and singing, and that was actually a service. It wasn't just like a nice, you know, choir addition. It was an actual service of God, because it's like you said, it's kind of the best way to express ourselves and to be heard by others, really.
You know, I remember I was a music student in college, working towards a bachelor's of music composition, composing music. And I had a mentor. And this mentor of mine, he was writing his doctorate, but he took me under his wings. And he was an Anglican, not really practicing, but those were the days when everybody had a religion, even if they didn't keep it or not. So he called himself an Anglican. But he had this serious Jew jealousy inside him, to the point that he was convinced that all the great composers were really Jewish. One time I remember I said to him in a conversation, I said, David, that was his name, David, why do you think it is that so many of the great violinists are Jewish? And he looked at me with this look of disdain, like, you know, like an elitist looks down at a peon. How could you speak in such a way? I said, David, what did I say wrong? He said, you implied in your ignorant words that there are or have been great violinists who are not Jewish.
Right.
I said, but there was, you know, the Italian guy and the Korean lady or whatever, there are others. And he said, those are violin players. To be a violinist, you have to be a Jew. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
He said to me, how many violin concertos did Beethoven write? I said, he only wrote one. He says, why did he only write one? You know why he only wrote one? He says, because he loved it so much, he couldn't write another one to compete with it. And do you know who played that first violin concerto? He said, the only one who could play it was a Jew. And ever since then, the only ones who can play it are Jews. And that was part of his proof that Beethoven had to be Jewish, because how could a non-Jew write something that only a Jew could play? Obviously, he was Jewish as well.
Must have been Jewish.
Beethoven, he says, is Beit Evan, the house of stone.
Oh, okay.
In Holland, the family were importing diamonds from the East Indies. So Beit Evan became Beethoven, whatever. But
it's an interesting theory, definitely.
so I asked him, why violin? He said, piano? He said, no, there are non-Jews also who can play piano, but violin is Jewish. I said, what's it about violin? So he explained that violin means you're taking a very agonizing sound, painful sound, and making it sweet and beautiful. And he said that belongs to the Jewish soul. That's a Jewish soul. So yeah, but it's very prominent. For a long time in Europe, musicians were either gypsies or Jews. The good musicians were in the courts, in the royal courts, were Jews. So his theory, and I think it's not just his theory, was that in order to be a composer, you had to get baptized and hide the fact that you were Jewish, because composers, conductors, directors, that was already close to high society. You know, your daughter might even marry one. A musician, never gonna let your daughter marry a musician, you know, so that's okay. They can be Jews, but but it's a very Jewish thing, that music. We have to sing in our davening. Our major means of communication with God really is through music, is through singing.
Yeah, it's a deeper part of our soul, and you can hear the sadness in a sad, I mean, a happiness as well, but especially in like a sad song, you can hear the sadness of whoever's playing the music, especially if it's something that they've composed.
You know, the Rebbe Rashab told his son.
Just Rabbi Freeman. Some of our listeners might not know who the Rebbe Rashab is, so if you have if you can just translate as well.
The Rebbe Rashab. I was waiting for you to ask me. The Rebbe Rashab, that's the Rabbi Shalom Dovber, who was the fifth Rebbe of Lubavitch. So he was the father of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, the sixth Rebbe of Lubavitch. And he told his son, he once caught his son singing a sad song. So he told me, you're not allowed. Not allowed. It is forbidden for a Jew to sing a sad song. Not allowed. So what about this song? What about that? He says, oh, those songs are, that's dveikus. That's a yearning song. That's not sad. That's yearning. But a sad song you can't sing. It's different. But a yearning. And many people make that mistake. They'll take a Jewish song, like a nigun, and they'll play it as though it's sad, but it's not meant to be sad. It's meant to be yearning. Sad is easy. Sad just dies there. But yearning for something greater, pulling at you, that's okay. That's good. That you have to sing.
It's true. It's kind of like the Baal Shem Tov, the starter of the Hasidic movement, what he said about happiness and depression, I think it was, right? He said, happiness is not, being happy is not a mitzvah. It's not one of the 613, but it can bring you to the greatest good deeds. And depression, sadness when used in the wrong way, is not an avera, it's not a sin, but it can lead to the worst things. And it's really tough for, I guess, for us as human beings to not, you start getting into a low feeling, a low mood, and there's that very fine line between, or that brink, kind of the edge of the cliff of staying on the cliff, being in, using that as that emotion as a positive kind of boost towards like a good direction, or just falling off the cliff and then being stuck in a hole somewhere.
The Baal Shem Tov also said that you should never cry. You should never cry. But he cried a lot. We have his siddur. You can see the stains of tears on the siddur, and even drops of blood. He said sometimes he cried so much there were drops of blood in the tears. He cried so much. He says you shouldn't cry out of sadness. It's crying out of joy or out of yearning. Oh, those are good tears.
Right.
Not tears out of sadness. I even remember once when I had to compose a piece, and it got to the point of the largo, a slow piece segment in this set for, I think it was for string quartet. It was so many years ago, but I couldn't write that part of it. So I realized I'm not in the mood for it. It's a nice summer day. I can't write this on a nice summer day. So what did I do? I closed all the curtains, shut all the lights and closed all the curtains, and lay down on the floor and tried to get in a sad mood, and ended up just going to bed. Because the creativity doesn't come out of the sadness. It comes out of when you're breaking out of that. When you're breaking out of that and something's pulling at you, trying to pull you down, and no, I'm ripping out of that. There's some life there coming out of the darkness. Then there's some beauty. Then there's some music.
It's like the first sprouting of life coming out after, the seed like germinates in the ground. It's the first sprouting that comes out. That's when the beauty starts getting revealed. That's like the coming out of the sadness.
Yes, that type of beauty.
Yeah. Very cool. You mentioned you were going for a degree in I don't know what the name of the degree is, but in music
Composition.
Composition, yeah. Right. What was just kind of like where you're from, because you weren't always a rabbi, right?
I wasn't born a rabbi.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, rabbis weren't born with beards. We come with the whole person before the beard. But can you just share a bit about kind of where you grew up and a bit of how that was, or what? I think when you were younger, you were not Chabad, you were not religious, I think, also at the time. I don't know, but I
didn't know that I was religious.
You didn't know that you were religious. Right.
I didn't know I was a rabbi either. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But you did make one assumption. You said when I grew up. That's making an assumption.
Yeah, that's true. It's a big assumption. We never grow up.
There's a city at the end of the world called Vancouver. Vancouver, British Columbia. On the Pacific Ocean, Pacific Northwest. And people go there because that's as far as you can go. And then you fall off the end. So my parents came there, one from an Iraqi family from India, came to Vancouver that direction. And the other one came from England, originally from Russia, to Vancouver, met there. So Vancouver was a pretty wild place, being the end of the world. And especially during the Vietnam War, that's where all the draft dodgers ran to. So,
because they couldn't run any further, I guess.
Yeah, that was it. Except dive into the ocean. So it was a place when, at that time, and during my adolescence, when you had all these American draft dodgers coming to corrupt our youth. I was one of the youth. So that whole era of radicalism and creativity, rejection of everything beforehand, and at the same time tremendous originality. All these opposites pulling you. There were drugs, and there was enlightenment, and there was the worst ugliness, and together with things that were very beautiful. And it was a very confusing world for an adolescent. So I think those were really my formative years at that time, I look back upon. And I played guitar. I really was trying to get good at classical guitar, but whatever guitar I would play, Bob Dylan or Leonard Cohen as well. I remember the day that Jimi Hendrix died, and we all walked out of school. You can't go to school.
Morning day, yeah.
So it was a very wild time then, in Vancouver of all places. And I decided I didn't want to finish high school. I mean, there's a whole story behind that. There was a little piece of paper stuck on a bulletin board in high school. I was in grade 9. And it said, a couple of us are getting together to make our own school. So I came to the meeting, and I was the youngest one there. And they worked things out, had meetings for months, and found ways to get funding for this new school of theirs. But the only way they could get funding, it turned out, was by making the school for dropouts. But the law was you could not drop out of school until you're 15 years old. And I was only 14.
Oh.
So, and I had already gone and told everybody, I'm dropping out of school. I'm leaving school. This is it. You're never going to see me again. So I couldn't go back. And to top that, my father told me that if you're not working towards your grade 12 degree, you're not invited to stay in this house. You'll have to find another roof over your head somewhere, which looked kind of expensive for somebody 14 years old and difficult.
Right.
So what I ended up doing is I found a place that was a tutorial college, which meant that you paid and they tutored you. And they said that they could get me through my grade 12 certificate that year, which should have been my grade 10 year. They could get me my grade 12 certificate. It cost a certain amount of money. Well, that was no problem because I was giving guitar lessons. Guitar lessons had money on hand, and I didn't have to pay for a roof over my head. So from the money from the guitar lessons, I was able to pay to this tutorial college. The problem was things were very suspicious looking. They were good teachers, excellent teachers, but I basically had them alone all by myself. All the other students weren't turning up. Why weren't they turning up? Because it turned out that this was really a front for an immigration racket to get in students from Singapore and Hong Kong and so on, get them into Canada on visas, and then they would disappear. So I was the only one who was learning over there. Well, that was good for me because I had a professor from Paris teaching me French and a professor from New Zealand teaching me history and a biologist teaching me biology. It was very good for me. And I had them on my own. But near the end of the year, the place was all of a sudden, the administrator disappeared, and there were all these official-looking people looking through all the documents, and how am I going to get my grade 12 certificate? But I managed to write the exams. I got my grade 12 certificate. And then I was free to, as my father put it, to hang out with the fringe members of our society.
He was very happy with you at the time.
No, there was a free university in Vancouver at the time, where people just got together and made up courses, made up classes, and sat and discussed and had Gestalt groups and things like that, encounter sessions, taught things. And I was the organizer of the anarchist discussion group, which was probably the best organized and longest standing of all the groups in the Free University. And I gave guitar lessons and just whatever. There were all sorts of things going on. There were all sorts of gurus passing through town, and Kung Fu arrived, and yoga. I was teaching yoga as well, part of the time.
What year was this? Around what year?
This would be 1972, 73. Okay. 74, yeah.
The start of the 70s. Yes, culture.
Still in that time happening. Everything was still happening. 1970, so it was 70. And then eventually, my uncles put together some money to send me off to Israel. And I was supposed to stay with my relatives in Israel, but I ended up hitchhiking around the country. And the Sinai Peninsula belonged to Israel at the time, and hung out with the Bedouins over there. And then I managed to get to Amsterdam, and then to London, biked around, did all these things, and met a lot of people, saw a lot of things, and in retrospect, only realized later how close I came to being murdered many times. I had no idea what was going on. Yeah.
What are one of those episodes?
Oh, you don't want to.
Too much.
I mean, just being there with the Bedouins, that was a dangerous thing.
You were living with the Bedouins?
Well, there were a group of us students who were living in a grove of palm trees by the water, by the beach, and near the Bedouins right nearby. And had a lot to do with them back and forth. There was one time I was playing, they have this game called Meal, that you draw something in the sand. It's sort of like in between checkers and tic-tac-toe. You draw it in the sand and you put stones and move them around. And I was playing one of them, and the chief Bedouin comes along and starts instructing him how he should play. And I was going to win. And a friend of mine whispered to me, "You better make sure you lose, because that's the chief." Oh, there were worse situations than that, but
Gosh, living with Bedouins, that sounds crazy.
There were
It's crazier.
Amsterdam and London was pretty unsafe too. So there were a lot of situations, but I gained a lot. I mean, I was young and naive, so I got into all these situations.
Right.
But from each person that I met, I learned many, many things. This one guy was a sailor who sailed every port in the world, and another one was an anthropologist, a professor who was out of a job, and so many different people that I got into conversations with and learned so many things from. And in London, I went every day to the Royal Albert Hall, and students could come for free and listen to a concert, and heard from the best conductors and symphony orchestras in the world playing. So it was enriching. An enriching experience, right. But I wouldn't recommend it for anybody else.
Right. Yeah. Post facto, it was a enriching experience. But yeah, I guess that's life. You go through, you learn from everyone, and then you kind of realize some things probably shouldn't have happened, but definitely have taken good things from them happening. So that was kind of, I guess, your more like, I guess, young 20s or late teens, and then
No, that was 15, 16.
That's still at 16. Years. Gosh.
15, 16, yeah.
Wow.
And then when I came back, I decided I had to be good at something, so I'm going to be a musician. And again, I went back to the same music studio and gave lessons there. And I started giving lessons when I was 14 years old. So I gave lessons again, and I looked for someone to teach me music theory and paid him to teach me music theory. And I asked him, if I want to write music, who do I go to? And he said, well, there's a famous composer who lives in town, and she just retired this year. Maybe she'll give you lessons. Her name was Jean Coulthard, and she married a very wealthy man. So she lives in a mansion. So I strapped my guitar to my back and got on my bicycle and bicycled down to her mansion. It's my torn blue jeans and t-shirt and long hair and sandals. I walked through all her gardens and fountains up to the door of the house, knocked on the door. The door opens, there's this fancy lady with beautiful pearls and diamonds, and asked me, can I help you? And I said, well, I heard that, I asked her, are you Jean Coulthard? She says, yes. I heard you're a composer and you might give me composition lessons to write music. She said, did you write anything? I said, yeah, let me show you. So she sat me down, I played some of my music. And she said, yeah, but can you write music? Yeah, I know music theory. So she took some manuscripts, she wrote out a few notes. Says, what can you do with this? So I took the pencil and I thought, and I made some music out of it. And she says, oh. And she tried again. What can you do with this? I took the pencil and made some music out of it. And then she says to me, well, I can give you music lessons, composition lessons, but I don't think you can afford my lessons. How much are they? So remember, this is what, 73, I guess. Yeah, probably still 73. She said, I charge $60 a lesson. So at that time, just put things into perspective, I had friends who were renting a house with multiple bedrooms for $80 a month.
Oh,
and
gosh.
She wants $60.
It's almost like a month's rent. Yeah.
So, so I said, look, that's about what I earn, teaching guitar lessons. So I think I could put together $20 a lesson. She said, okay, $20 a lesson.
Good bargain.
And so I started coming to her, and then she gave me this, when it came to like August, September, she told one of her teaching assistants, used to be when she was a professor, told him, take this guy to the university and register him in the music faculty. I said, I don't want to go to university. He says, you're going to university, but I don't want to go back to school. I dropped out of school when I was 14 years old. I don't want to go back to school. She said, you're going to university, register him. And her teachers, the guy who became my mentor, he said, but registration is over already. She said, tell them that Jean Coulthard says he has to be registered. So I got into university. And as a music student, I had to learn how to play piano. I had to learn how to sing. I had to learn a lot of music theory, composition. I had to learn how to sit in the desk, which was very hard for me to sit in the desk. If I was eating my lunch or something like that, it made it easier. But just to sit there and listen to somebody talking was very, very, very hard. That was hard. Anyways, I guess I learned a lot from being there. I had a lot of private time with professors and talking with them.
It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, well, it was good.
But what was your first encounter with I guess Judaism in general?
Well, we had a very Jewish home. It's just that we didn't keep kosher or Shabbos. We had a Jewish home in the sense that I had to have bar mitzvah lessons. And even though we had a Christmas tree in December, but whenever my grandmother came over, we had to hide it. So that's very Jewish.
Put a menorah on top of it.
Hiding the tree.
Yeah, it's like hiding the afikomen. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'd go over Friday nights to my grandparents, and there was a traditional Iraqi home. So I associated Judaism with curried rice and chicken, gefilte fish.
Yeah. Well, what was, I guess, your first connection with Judaism that was, I say, more meaningful or brought you towards the direction of the rest of your life's journey, or where you are at this point in time, where you are today?
Yeah, well, a lot of things came together. I knew we had a Jewish home. I knew we don't eat on Yom Kippur. Like my father told me, twice a year, a Jew has to go to the synagogue. He has to sit down when the rabbi says sit down, stand up when the rabbi says stand up, listen to his entire sermon, and for this, he will be forgiven for all his sins. It looked like a very boring place, the synagogue. All these old men mumbling into their books. It didn't look like a place for me. There was didn't seem anything original, creative, radical about it at all. And especially the way I was taught at bar mitzvah lessons. Just read the words, but you don't know what they mean. What was the point of all that? So I was really searching for something spiritual. Like I got into yoga, and that was when the radicalism started becoming. First, radicalism went into drugs, and then from drugs, Baba Ram Das came back from India and said, forget the drugs, forget the psychedelics, it's all about enlightenment. I was searching in every direction. And going to all these different people who had something to say. So there was that summer, one summer, 1974, early summer, after school, there was 8 of us, might have been 10 of us, hard to remember. We packed into a Volkswagen van. All of us were artists, actors, writers, musicians, and we'd gotten a government grant to take all of this to the schools up north, all the redneck schools, where they were up there cutting lumber or mining. And we were going to go to those high schools and bring them the arts. because we didn't have any exposure to the arts. That was our grant. Drive up there in a Volkswagen van and bring the arts to these schools. We're talking about, like, in May, we hit a snowstorm along the way. That's how north we were going.
Yeah.
So this situation of living together in close quarters for a month with nutty artists and musicians and actors was driving me insane, totally nuts. And I needed time on my own. And I felt, for the first time, I really felt Jewish, because I felt I'm not the same as them. They don't have a culture like I have, a background and roots like this. They don't know where I'm coming from at all. All this time, these were my friends. These were people I hung out with. But living with them made me feel different. And I was in a struggle. I didn't know what was the struggle going on inside me. This was after 2 years of university. No, 1 year. That's my first year. That's my first year of university. So I'm 18 years old. And finally, I was so torn back and forth. I said, I have to talk to God about this. But I haven't talked to him for many years. Not since, say, I was maybe 15, 16 years old. When I was hitchhiking around Europe, then I would talk to him once in a while. I would take out my little flute recorder. That's how I would talk to him. But since now, the things I was into, the place I'd been, I didn't talk to God. But now I felt I have to talk to him. I have to. It was guys and girls together and the relationships going on, and it was totally crazy. So I got up early one morning, and we were all sleeping on the gym floor in some high school. I got up early in the morning and I went and had a shower. And I got to talk to God. Somehow, and this is hard to explain. Coming from where I was coming from, I should have decided, well, I'll stand here the way God made me and I'll talk to him. But I felt that I have to get dressed. I don't know why. And when I got dressed, I tried to talk to God. And no, it was like I was writing poetry or something. It was all artificial. Nothing was real. Nothing was sincere. So I thought, well, maybe I'll sing to him. Because, my writing had been, this is how you write. And I couldn't just speak naturally. This is how you speak. It shouldn't just come out. So I thought I'll sing to him. But by now I was a trained musician. So again, it was all artificial. I couldn't just sing to him. I couldn't do anything. And there was no way. And I realized that all the places I'd been, all the things that I'd done, that had made it impossible to do this again. I'd lost that innocence of a child. And that hurt me. That caused me a lot of pain, until I looked and I saw my hand was in a fist and there was a teardrop on it. And I thought, okay, so that teardrop must have been for real. But right now, it's not for real anymore. But there must have been a moment that was for real. And then I told everybody that I'm out of here. They'll have to continue the whole thing on their own. It's okay if I don't get paid. And I hitchhiked back to Vancouver, stopping a few places along the way, to go hiking and thinking, just camping out by myself. And when I came back that summer, everything changed for me. Everything changed. My sister had decided that she's going off to, my older sister, to a girls' seminary in Minnesota. And she came back and she was a raging religious fanatic. That was Manis Friedman's seminary there in Minnesota for girls to learn some Judaism. And my older sister, she was a real feminist and artist, and now she decided she was a religious fanatic. but she told me that there's these 4 yeshiva boys in town, and they're visiting. It's called Merkez Shlichus. I didn't know at the time, but boys from Lubavitch yeshivas go out to all different towns all over the place, all over the world. And there's 4 of them here in town, and I've got to meet them. And she arranged for me to stay for Shabbos at a Persian family that lived near the synagogue, and I'd stay there, and then I'd meet these guys. And I remember that was my first Shabbos with this Persian family that sat on cushions on the floor, and they ate nice foods, and everybody ate together. The father made kiddush, of course, and then at the end of the meal, they all got up and put on a sweater or something. And I said, "Where are you going?" I said, "We're going for a walk." I said, "Where are we walking to?" They laughed. "We're not walking anywhere. We're just going for a walk." Now, my family, if the whole family would sit down for dinner together, it would be World War III. I'd call my father a fascist, and my mother would start crying, and my sister would stomp out of the room, and who knows what would happen. And here's a family sitting together and talking together and just going for a walk together, not going anywhere particular, it's just going slowly, walking, on a summer's evening. It was so beautiful. I never experienced that. And I traveled around a lot. I never experienced that. So the next day, of course, I slept in. I didn't want to go to a synagogue, but by the afternoon, I got schlepped in, and one of these boys is talking. So I looked, and it looked to me, all I could think was mafioso with beards. Because they have these pinstripe suits and a black hat. The only place I'd seen a black hat before was in the mafia movies. I hadn't been in Brooklyn. I didn't know any of this. Black hats. But they got beards. Mafioso don't have beards. What's going on with them? So one of them was going to speak. Okay, so I sat there through services, stood up, sat down, whatever. And then one of them is speaking. And nobody had a clue what he's talking about. I couldn't understand. Is he speaking English or some other language? Every once in a while, he's talking about light coming into the windows. He's talking about the vessels shattered. I thought something went wrong in the kitchen. Go check out the kitchen. What on earth? But I saw it's something very deep, And all these students who were away had been away at yeshiva, or some of them went to Yeshiva University, other yeshivas, they were back in town and they were listening to him. So they asked him questions afterwards. One of them said, "So you're trying to prove the existence of God?" He says, "No, I'm not." Obviously, nobody understood what he was talking about. So I grabbed him afterwards. When everybody finished asking the question, I grabbed him afterwards. And they said, "I want you to explain to me what you're talking about." There's one thing I'd learned from traveling around, that the only way you learn anything is by grabbing somebody and squeezing it out of him. So explain to me. So he starts trying to explain about this light everywhere. I said, "I don't see. What light are you talking about? There's different types of light. There's the inner light. There's encompassing light. I don't see this light." He said, "Well, this is the whole purpose, is you have to become capable of seeing this light that's bringing everything into existence. It's bringing it." He says, "Everything is just like the light." I said, "Like it's a projection, like light is projecting stuff." He says, "Yeah, like a hologram, something like that." He says, "Yeah, light projecting things into existence." I couldn't get it. But anyways,
yeah,
I walked out of there, and it was downstairs. Walked upstairs and outdoors, and in front of me was a grove of trees, tall willows. And I looked, and I didn't see tall willows. I saw beams of light coming down from the sky.
Uh-huh.
And this was without any psychotropics. I just walked out and saw this.
What did they put in the chicken soup that night?
So I found out where these guys were staying, and it just so happened that my mentor from university was going out of town and needed somebody to take care of his house for him, which happened to be in the Jewish area near the synagogue. So I sat his house for him, and I was kind of lonely. So I invited some friends to stay with me. And at the same time, I was in the Jewish area. So I was going over to the house where these 4 yeshiva bochurim were staying and arguing with them every day. And it turned out that this guy, I didn't know this for years, until many, many years later, but the guy I was arguing with all the time, his name was Yossi Hecht. And he was one of the top students in Lubavitch. They called them the Chezrim, those who can stand and listen to the Rebbe speak for 6 hours and repeat the whole thing back after. And he became later the Rav, the chief rabbi of Eilat. He was there with another, Gabriel Marzel, who was a legend of Tzfas today. And there were 2 Frenchies, I never caught their name. Anyways, I was over there every day arguing with them, talking with them, and showing him how ridiculous he was. And coming back the next day to argue some more. At that time, also there was a mathematicians conference. All these things came together. There was a mathematicians conference at the university at the end of August. And 2 of the mathematicians, Professor Eliyahu Cohen from Montreal and Professor Paul Rosenblum from Minnesota. And Professor Cohen, I saw him with a long black coat, a capota, and he had a beard. I said to him, "Are you one of those members of that cult called the Hasidim?" And he stepped back and he said, "Well," I said, "we tried to be Hasidim." And then Paul Rosenblum, I realized this is a very brilliant man. I started and talked with him, and he's like the typical absent-minded professor all over the place, but very brilliant and very interesting things to say. So I thought, so you can be educated and intelligent and religious. Wow, it's amazing. So all these things just came together at the same time. And I really had no choice at that point. It is so like a big lasso had come out and grabbed me and tied me in with all these people. And, there was a lot of struggle. There was a lot of struggle because they were my friends living with me in the house. And one day I remember I'm arguing with this Yossi Hecht. And I said, "I'll come back tomorrow. See you tomorrow." He said, "Well, tomorrow is different. I don't know about tomorrow. Tomorrow is a fast day." I said, "A fast day? The only fast day is Yom Kippur." He says, No, tomorrow is also a fast day." I said, "What is it called?" He says, it's called Tisha B'Av. I heard Tishu B'Av. I said, "What kind of a crazy day is Tishu B'Av?" He says, "Well, Jews fast." He didn't give me any explanation. I don't know why. Maybe he thought I shouldn't be around for that day because that's not going to turn me on. You know?
Yeah, definitely not.
So the next morning, I decided I was going to skip breakfast. So the people staying with me in the house says, "Why you skip breakfast?" I said, "I just don't feel like eating." A lot of times I would fast. I used to do these cleansing fasts and so on. And it came to lunchtime, we're eating, and they said, "Hey, Freeman, you're not eating anything." He said, "What's up? Why aren't you eating?" I said, "Well, it's a Jewish fast day." He said, "What's the Jewish fast day?" I don't know, something like Tishu Bob or something. I don't know who Bob is. Tissue. I don't know what it is, but it's Jewish fasting. I'm Jewish, so I'm fasting. That's all. So it turns out the first Jewish holiday I ever kept was Tishu B'Av.
Oh gosh, not very exciting.
Yeah, but the feeling was, if Jews fast, I'm Jewish, so I fast, right?
Right.
The real struggle was when university started again, classes started again, and I had a very heavy schedule that year. And I was also that year elected president of the undergrad society. And and when you're a musician, especially in composition, you have to practice 6 hours a day, plus all these courses. Plus, I was still teaching in order to pay my way through university. So it's a very heavy load. And they tell me that when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, you don't go. It's like Shabbos. You don't go to school. So I'd already stopped practicing guitar on Shabbos. If you don't play guitar on Shabbos, I don't play guitar on Shabbos, fine. But it was hard to go a whole day without playing. But I found an interesting thing that I played much better on Saturday nights after a whole day of not playing. Really? So it's interesting. And so, but now they tell me that Rosh Hashanah in the middle of the week, I have to skip all my classes and not practice guitar and go to the synagogue. Can't do that. Can't do that. Even my mentor at university said to me, "You're not going to go to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah." He said, "I went once to a synagogue on Rosh Hashanah, and I went home and wrote down all the music afterwards."
Right, a lot of music.
Apparently, the cantor at the Shaare Zedek synagogue at the time was a famous cantor. I didn't even know that. All I knew was that as soon as he had everybody standing on their feet, he took all his time in the world just to keep you on your feet as a form of torture. So anyways, I decided keeping Shabbos is not for me. I'm not going to do this Rosh Hashanah thing. And I got up that morning, and my mind had determined that I'm going, and my feet wouldn't take me. And that's it. My feet are not going to take me. So what can I do? It doesn't make any sense to me, but my feet aren't going. So if they're not going to take me there, let's see if they'll take me to the synagogue, which was like an hour's walk, I guess. And they walked me there. So I figured 1 day is enough. 2 days, ridiculous. Same thing happened. So it was not my choice. It was not my decision. It just happened to me.
Just happened.
Yeah, against my free will. I figure it was all from that one initial teardrop. That's what did me in.
Right.
And my whole life, from that point on, if I'd have looked closely enough, I probably could have seen it inside that one teardrop.
Huh.
After that year, so that whole year there was a Lubavitch rabbi who moved to town, Raphael Minkovitz. He was teaching at the day school, and he had his house open. I could walk into his home at any time I wanted, which I really needed, a place just to hide, an oasis, an escape route from the rest of the world. And he learned with me a little bit, and gave me some things to learn, to study. And then at the end of the year, he said, well, you should go just for the summertime, or maybe a month or so, go to Morristown, New Jersey, where there's a yeshiva there, a special program for late starters. And he gave me a little book, little Sefer Hatanya, which I couldn't read yet. I put it in my backpack, and I started hitchhiking across America, visiting different Jewish communities. I visited the House of Love and Prayer in San Francisco, and places in Denver and St. Louis, all sorts of places. Almost ended up in Ner Yisrael in Baltimore. I was there for a little while. And then eventually ended up in Morristown, New Jersey, just for a month or so, which ended up being the whole summer. And after the summer, I decided to stay for another year. And after that year, for another summer. And then 9 years later, I was married and learning in Kollel.
Wow.
Yeah. It just happened to me. No choice.
Well, you've definitely, gosh, I guess it's coming from a different place, but you've definitely put a lot more things on the map with with what you do with Hasidus, with all the work you do at Chabad.org. It's funny. I guess you look back and you think, being that teenager living with the Bedouins, would you ever think you'd be sitting by a computer writing articles and kind of teaching Judaism on Chabad.org or through other channels?
I was always excited about computers. I remember when I was early in school and they said we're going to get to program a computer. It must have been like grade 5 or so. And you got these punch cards, and you could just black out on the punch card, and it would write. And then 2 days later, you'd get a printout with your name written 500 times, whatever you program. But I was excited about the idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I read a lot of science fiction, Arthur C. Clarke and Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov. I read science fiction. I read science fiction and mythologies. I loved mythologies.
Interesting mix.
Norse mythology and Greek mythology and all that, and science fiction. So so eventually, after getting out from yeshiva, and I wasn't really, I tried teaching, but I couldn't handle a discipline of a class. I was a wild kid who made trouble in class. I'm not going to be the disciplinarian. I couldn't do that. So computers, that was in the 80s. Computers were starting up. I got myself an Apple II clone and eventually a Mac II. And I became an Apple developer, taught myself assembly language and other languages. And then as networking opened up, there was CompuServe and AOL. And I found that we're doing a lot of counseling online. And the Jewish world was very active online, very active. The Jewish world online was probably more active than the Christian world or the Muslim world in the early years.
That's not specific to Chabad, just in general, the Jewish world.
No, just Jewish things going on, Jewish discussions from every. In the years of CompuServe and AOL, you could go and look which forums had the most activity those days, and Jewish forums, Israel forums, Judaism things, so were very, very active.
Interesting.
And Jews from all over the world, especially Jews who were isolated. We had a study group up in the Northwest Territories, in Yellowstone, and other places that were isolated, just reaching out to them. And then there was, I started writing software for children, educational software for children, which did very well, thank God. And at the same time, doing stuff online. When the internet opened up in the early 90s, and there was this guy, YYK, who was, they call him the father of the Jewish internet, YYK, Yossi Zakazan. And he enlisted me to help him with stuff. And he said, you have to write Chassidus for the internet. I said, well, all the Chassidus in English makes it so dull and boring and difficult to read. It's supposed to be exciting and entertaining. So he said, so make it exciting and entertaining. Do something. So I wrote a piece then, the Sinai Files. That was probably the first piece I wrote. The Sinai Files, making the whole story between Moses arguing with the angels about who's getting the Torah, making it exciting, but using all the background materials. And then I started sending out a daily dose, trying to get it daily, little things.
Yeah. The daily dose of wisdom, right?
Yes. So the daily dose of wisdom, that's been going on since 1994.
Oh, wow. What about Kabbalah tunes? Was that part of your?
Kabbalah tunes was later. That's when I was working on the side for Chabad.org and supporting myself with all sorts of other work. Computer related, not computer related. And then 2006 came on full-time salary for Kabbalah.org. And I wanted to do some, the whole point was to be creative, be original. So I wanted to do animations. So but all we could afford was 1 minute animations with a local animator who lived in Park Slope doing, and she's a children's animator. I didn't intend to do children's animations, but that's what we had. That's what we worked with. She was good about it. We got Kabbalah tunes out. And even though we haven't done Kabbalah tunes for quite a few years now, but it still gets a lot of hits. People are watching those Kabbalah tunes all the time. There's 100 Kabbalah tunes. And every day there's people coming and watching them.
Well, for the people who don't know what Kabbalah tunes are, what was the idea of Kabbalah tunes? Or is the idea?
The idea of Kabbalah tunes was to present the deepest ideas of Hasidus, Kabbalah, Hasidus really, in the most accessible format. Basically, that even a 4-year-old could understand something from this.
Wow. And an
And I only
adult,
had a minute
yeah.
to do it in.
Gosh, that's.
It was a lot of fun. It was good. It was a lot of fun. At a certain point, it was decided we're not funding this anymore. It was costing too much.
Right.
I didn't think so. I thought it was worth it, but that was the decision. We went on to other things. But look, right now, Chabad.org is the busiest, certainly the busiest forum on the internet. Getting millions of views a year, tens of millions of views. And just in the month of Tishrei, all the millions of views we got in Tishrei, get articles that get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of views. So it's reaching a lot of people. Yeah. And the stuff that we put out on social media ends up everywhere. They find ways of taking the logo off or taking the name off, the attribution, but it's everywhere. So I think we're accomplishing something with it. And mostly, I need to be creative. I need to come up with ideas, with new stuff.
Is there anything you're working on now in that realm, the creative realm? Or anything you'd like to work on if you had more time, let's say?
No, we have stuff we're working on in the background, some 3D animation that's going to take some time to come out. Just the articles I write, I try to be original. The Daily Dose, I do the art for the Daily Dose myself. So I'm learning something from that because I was never an artist, but now I'm learning to do that, to work with photography.
Nice.
And create. Always have to be learning something new.
Yeah.
Never the same thing.
Keep it fresh.
So, yeah, keep up with new technology and new ways of doing things so that your mind always stays young, and stay away from old people.
Stay away from old people.
Yeah, then you start acting like them, you know.
Yeah, I guess so. Got to hang out with the youth. Keep youthful.
Yeah.
Well, now's the perfect time because, unfortunately, but most older people are staying at home, so they're kind of staying away from us. But you talk about You talked about originality. We could talk. Can we talk about davening prayer for a bit?
I think area? Most of what we're talking about until now really is about davening.
Well, that's true, and that's okay. That's why I felt this was like the underlying feeling the whole time I was thinking, because I knew we started off the conversation, I was thinking, this will probably go somewhere towards prayer, and it took like a totally different direction, and I think it was amazing because A, it was amazing, and B, the underlying feeling of it kept on making my brain think, this is like prayer. This is the underlying feeling of prayer. I mean, I'll let you talk, but like originality, something that's more personal to us rather than something that's just kind of a framework to work off of. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the reason I feel it's all about prayer is because, like I said, it all started with that one teardrop. I was trying to be sincere, and that set the course for everything afterwards, both from within me and the rest of the world around me as well. And so I could keep on going back to that's my seminal point, sort of my mandate statement. Whenever you're starting on a new project, you want to first write a mandate, which is a one-page that tells this is what we are trying to achieve. These are the things we will not sacrifice. This is our goal. These other things are disposable, but not this. So the mandate really comes down to, can I be sincere? Can I talk to the creative universe from a sincere and open place? Is that conversation possible? That's what prayer is about. It gets lost in all the discussion and teaching how to do it, what to say, what to think about. What gets lost is the focal point of prayer is, I am speaking to you. that one word summarizes, packets tight, really the whole focus of prayer. The word you, with a capital Y. If you want it with a capital Y, put it with a capital Y. It's not it, it's not thou, it's you. So as soon as God becomes an it, prayer is gone. And if there's no prayer, then God is an it. The whole purpose of prayer is that God remains you. You means you don't have to go searching for him. He's right here. And you means, so yes, so what would you like to say? We are talking. But it also means that it's got to be real, because if it's fake, well, that's obvious. You're standing before one who knows when it's fake.
Yeah.
So it's got to be real.
How do you, I'll talk for myself, right? Because I can't talk for others. How you have a whole siddur, right? Assuming everyone has different forms of how they daven, how they pray, and you have a siddur, which is text packed, right? And what I assume what the idea was, I mean, originally it was the Anshe Knesset Psychedelic, the rabbis during that generation, a few thousand years ago. So they kind of put together the first form of prayer, like an official form, and then it kind of grew as time went on. How do you it gets difficult. It gets difficult to focus on that you relationship, right? Conversation between me and you, between me and God. Like you said, not making God an it, making it personal. And there's like a form of connection, which is what prayer is. But how do you see that working with the framework? And I understand the framework was originally set out to be kind of like a foundation to work off of and to express yourself within that framework of the text. But how do you see like a modern day 2020 Jew who prays from the Siddur? How can you see him incorporating that feeling into a text-based service, which he finds to be kind of a bit dreary, let's say? And I know there are obviously many people struggling with this, not just myself, but
I find that the Siddur and the Sefer Tehillim is fantastic. It's such a blessing, because if I'm going to talk to God, I'll say, hi, God, it's me, Tzvi again. Having a nice day. I'd like this and that. And, oh, I forgot, I have to praise you first. Yes, you're very great. I mean, how long can I hold on the conversation for? This way, I can hold on to the conversation, because look, the rabbis say I have to say all these words, so I'm still here. Right? Because you can't throw me out, because you say, you told me to listen to them, and they say I got to say all these words, and they're your words, right? So I get to stay here.
Right.
I have an excuse to stand there longer.
But you get lost. You're right. But that's true, definitely. But you do get it does get challenging. It does get challenging. I'm wondering.
The challenge is to keep your mind focused on that. I'm standing before you. If you don't know the meaning of the words that you're saying, well, yeah, you
even
have
if you
to learn.
do. Well, definitely, I think definitely people have to learn translate. If people don't know what the words mean, that they're missing a huge part of prayer.
It's supposed to be part of the curriculum from the very earliest years. Before you learn learn your parsha and chumash and everything else, learn the words, the meaning of the words that you're saying. That should be the priority of every Hebrew school education. For some reason, it's not. I don't understand that. It's crazy. But every major authority says it should be, and it's just not done. Right. I don't know why.
Well,
a Jew should come out of yeshiva, at least, or high school. Should be the most obvious thing is you should be able to translate Sefer Tehillim.
Yeah,
that's the most used Jewish book of all. So why is it that we don't? Why is it we're not taught? I don't know. Doesn't make any sense to me. That's the first thing to be taught.
Yeah, that's for sure. And what about knowing the translation, but finding the kind of the etymology, or the kind of how it was written, or who's been written by, or when it was written. So I've seen some people make conceptual translations, which kind of takes the concept of what the tefillah is talking about and kind of makes it more, I guess you say, relatable or something. So there's one part of making the words relatable to a 2020 person, and there's another thing of making it. I'm not saying changing the words. I'm talking about how to make it more kind of approachable. And the second thing is kind of the amount of time or text to go through. So I know I'll give you an example, right? So I found your we spoke about this before we started recording, but I found your meditation classes on Maidani to be fantastic. I found them on Chabad.org. I thought they were fantastic. I took notes. I kind of started practicing it myself for a while. I've given a few classes on it, based on it. And I found that to be amazing, an amazing change for our davening, for my own davening experience, and other people who I've learned with. They've said the same. And then you try to incorporate it with davening, which I did, and it was really amazing. But what's really difficult is that obviously our mind wanders, right? And we get to different places, but not even necessarily that. It's more like, how do you keep up with that level of conscious involvement with what you're reading through let's say an hour of a morning service, or through that many pages? Or is it not expected that someone keeps up with that focus the entire time? And the idea is that you kind of dip in, dip out, and you try as much as you can.
Yeah, you try. Well, first of all, you have to have, what are your major goals? Your major goal is that when you get to the beginning of the Amidah, the standing prayer, the Shemona Esrei, that at that point, you can take 3 steps back and 3 steps forward, and you want to have the mindset, at least, even if you don't feel it, but some sort of mindset, that now I am in this truly absurd position of a created being speaking with its creator. And he is really interested in what I have to say. So that's your principal goal, is in that word you. I want to be able to say the word you and mean it. If I'm saying you to a wall and it's just a wall, then the you is not a you. You means I'm speaking to, I feel a presence here. That's what I want to feel, that there's a presence here. I described in one article the beginning of that Amidah. It's something like, this taking 3 steps back and 3 steps forward. It's something like, you're in the middle, say, of a very tumultuous scene. I imagine you're in a hotel room, and it's pouring rain and thunder outside, and there are gunshots, and you see your beloved lying in a pool of blood on the floor, and you try to make a call with your cell phone, and it's not working, and you hear the police sirens in the distance, and they're too far away, and then at a certain point you just scream out, cut the lights are off, the cameras are out, and you turn to the director and you say, the script stinks. This is not the way it should go. I know you're a great director and everything, but I think we can do a better job over here. It shouldn't be like this. And the director's listening. I mean, he entrusted you with this role. He entrusts you to, sometimes you know better from the inside. Okay, so he listens. So that's, in those 3 steps back, you're stepping out of this fantasy of the world. Call it a fantasy, relative to the true reality, that it's just, there's just God here, that's all. And here I am, his created being, and I'm talking to him about how the story is going. And maybe I don't like it.
Yeah.
Maybe there are things to kvetch about. That's why Jews are such kvetches. We're given that power of kvetch so that we can use it during the time of tefillah. If you don't use it then, you're going to use it somehow during the rest of the day. So best to use it then when you got the right opportunity.
Right.
So has to be your entire focus. Everything that's coming beforehand and afterwards is just to frame that. So what do you want to do beforehand is you want to get yourself into that world. It takes a while to get out of this world. So what you want to do beforehand is you have to think about, what is this world? It's not what it appears to be. As long as I think this world is a place full of stuff, that's all it is. It's just a place that is, and it's full of stuff, and it just goes without any meaning to it. Then how am I going to talk to God? Where is he? There's no place for him amongst all this stuff. So I have to think deeper and realize, no, this place is a creation. And it's a dynamic creation. It's being created every moment. Like music has to constantly be created. It's music that you can see and touch. Music that you can walk through. But the musician is always playing it. It's constantly being played. So everything is being sustained, just like the vibrations of the strings sustain that music. It's being sustained by God's voice sustaining it. And I'm inside it. I'm inside this world. And I see it as just a world. But if I were able to step back a little more, I would see it as a composition, as music within its creator. So I have to step back all the time. So that's that stepping back that's happening. You think beforehand, you study beforehand, and you think beforehand. And when you're saying the Psukim de Zimre, all those chapters of Tehillim that you say at the beginning of the davening, you're putting yourself into that world. So that takes some knowledge, contemplation, and then creativity. What does that look like? Can I imagine something that cannot be seen? And putting yourself into a space where you're capable of envisioning the abstract. So for me, it's a lot of creativity. I have to come up with more and more metaphor to allow myself. It's like this, but it's not like that. So it's like this, but it's not like that. It's like a hologram, but it's like a symphony, but it's like a storyteller telling a story, but it's all within the mind of the storyteller still. And I want to see my reality in a very different way. And then it's possible to be speaking to God. Beyond that, though, is that real reckoning with yourself. Who am I really? What's my life about? What do I want out of all this? Could there be anything that I want more than an opportunity to be standing there talking with my Creator? How could there be anything more than that? So just like you say, the purpose of a mitzvah is the mitzvah. So the purpose of prayer is really just to have that opportunity, the prayer itself, just to have that. You know the story of the Baal Shem Tov. I'm sure it's the story of the Baal Shem Tov that the Rebbe said the most, told the most this story. It's a parable of one day the king announces throughout his kingdom that on a certain day, everybody must come before the king and make his request. Everybody. Now, it doesn't matter who it is, everybody will come, have their opportunity, and they must come before the king and make their request. So the word gets around to everywhere, and it gets to a distant town. In this town, there's a town beggar. The beggar is I imagine him as a middle-aged, lanky man, and has nothing to his name, lives by the day. Whatever he makes for that day, he gets some bread. And he hears also that the king demands that everybody must come before the king and make his request. So we asked somebody, does that mean everybody? Like, even if I don't own a house or I don't own a cow, I can also come? Everybody. So I have to come also. So I'm coming also. So he comes together with everybody of the town, and they meet other people from other towns, and gets like a bigger and bigger stream of people coming into the big capital city. So all these townspeople are coming to the capital city. Whoa, what's in the capital city? Whoa, what do they have there? We've never been there before. We've never been to the big city. And they all come in. As soon as they come into the gates of the city, of the wall, the market is all set up and everybody's set to sell all their wares to all these people visiting from towns all around. So all the people are coming and seeing apples like they've never seen before, and watermelons, no big, they've never seen before, and beautiful, whoa, I would like to own that horse, I'd like to own that donkey, all these things, and they get caught up in the marketplace. But this poor beggar doesn't have anything to buy. He can't buy anything, and he doesn't, what's the difference, this apple or that apple? He didn't come here to buy, he doesn't have money to buy anything anyways. So he just keeps on walking through the marketplace. And it turns out, okay, there are also a few stubborn people that also just walk through the marketplace. And they get to this, finally, there's a crowd at the gate of the palace. And the gate of the palace opens, and these people stream in, flood the courtyard of the palace. And the courtyard of the palace is set up with such beautiful manicured trees and flowers and beautiful birds. Sitting in the trees, and the royal orchestra is playing beautiful music, and the people said, let's just chill a little bit, sit by the royal pond, and the waiters are serving royal Kool-Aid, and you get to sit there and have a sip and listen to the beautiful music. But the beggar says, I'm not interested. I was told I have to come before the king. I had to make my request. That's where do you go? And he keeps on asking, like the guards, is it anybody supposed to come? Like, I don't own anything, but can I come also? Yeah, go that way. So there's a few people who manage to get into the palace. And in the palace, they take you to one room and then to the next room, into the next room. In each room, there's beautiful paintings on the wall. In each room, there's beautiful sculptures and interesting books, and just the coffee tables are magnificent. And one guy he has to use the washroom. He gets to use the royal golden toilet bowl. And slowly, you see people are just staying behind in these rooms because they're so lovely, until a small group of people, maybe 5 or so of them, get to the throne room, and everybody else is left behind. And the first one goes up there, and he says, stands before my majesty, the king, and the king says, yes, what is your request? He says, well, I had many requests, but on my way here, I was in the palace, and I asked to use the restroom, and I saw that the king has a royal toilet bowl. And I so much desired that toilet bowl. I can't imagine life without that golden toilet bowl. I would like also to have a golden toilet bowl. So the king declares, send the man a royal toilet bowl express into his little cottage. He'll have a royal, he doesn't have the plumbing for it, doesn't matter. Give him the royal toilet bowl, okay? Yeah. Next comes up this lady, and she says, her request, Majesty the King, tomorrow I have a bridge game and the ladies are coming over. And if I could have that coffee table with the Turkish delight that you had on it, the ladies would be so impressed, And okay, send her the coffee table with the Turkish delight. Very good. Anyways, eventually gets to this beggar. And of course, he's standing on the side the whole time. He can't hear anything that's being said, but he sees that, you bow down to the king and they got all the gestures right and so on. So he gets up there and he stands there. And I see if I can do that. He's standing before the king and he goes like this. Nice. And he stands up again. And the king is sitting at the throne. And the king is like, no. And so he does another bow like that. And he's still standing there smiling. So the king says, so what do you have to say? Say? He bows again. My Majesty the King. So the king says, you were supposed to make a request. Oh, a request. The king says, so what would you like? So he knows as a king, you don't go begging for bread from the king, He said, well, I just wanted to stand here before the king. They told me everybody comes and and you have to appear before the king. And the king says, and make your request. And he says, well, he's thinking, what request? And he says, you know what? Let's do this more often. Can I come tonight again? Maybe like later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. I mean, it's up to you. You know, can we let's do this more often? Yeah. I'd like to come. I like this idea of coming for the king. Can I do it?
Yeah.
So the king melts at this. The king melts, whether he gives him a hug or when it depends on how the story goes. The king melts. It says, this man, let him into the palace anytime he wants. Anytime he wants, and anything he needs, open the royal treasury for him. He's the only person who wants to see me. He's interested in me. Mm-hmm. So this, the Baal Shem Tov said, is what King David says when he says the prayer, Tefillah La'ani, the prayer of the poor person, when he will pour out his soul before God. What is the prayer of the poor person? That he gets to pour out his soul before God. That's his prayer. His prayer is, I want to stand before you and be able to open up my heart and let my soul pour out. That's all I want.
That's prayer.
So that's the labor of prayer, is to become that beggar. That all you want is this circumstance. That's what you want. And it should open up and pour out. There is nothing else. So that's why I say that Siddur, the prayer book, is such a blessing, because I get to stand there for longer.
Yeah.
Take your time. Take your time. One of the complaints I have, people come back and they say, the synagogue, they go so fast. I can't keep up with them. I can't keep up with them. They're going so fast. Why do you need to keep up with them? If they're going fast, so don't keep up with them. Why are you complaining you can't keep up with them? Who said you have to keep up with them? Well, they say I have to keep up with them. They need a minion. I said, if they went too fast, it's their fault. They left you behind.
Yeah.
So you go, maybe you start with them. You try to start with them. And you start with them, and then you take whatever amount of time it takes you. And people say, but I can't say all that amount. I've only got 45 minutes. I've only got 1 hour. I can't say all that amount. Well, you know what? Go to a rabbi who knows his stuff and tell him that you got 45 minutes and work out what are the stuff you should say in that 45 minutes at your pace. Mm-hmm. At your pace. And if your pace is slow, so you do that. And then if you do that right and properly, so then maybe God will give you more time and you'll get an hour and a half to be able to put to it. Why? It's not a speed reading competition. No. You didn't go there to see like who can read faster.
It's like the story of the Barditchever, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev, who also lived in the what?
Which
Rabbi
one?
Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev.
Yeah, what's the story? Tell me the story.
Oh, I thought you said which Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev. So he's I'm actually named after him. My parents named me after him. Yeah, but he's he was in his shul. And he was davening, and you know this story for sure. And he approached someone from his shul, one of the congregants afterwards. And he walks over to him, and he looks at him, and the congregant looks at the rabbi and says yes, and the rabbi goes. So the guy says, "Excuse me." So the rabbi says. The guy says, Rabbi, I'm not sure what's going on. What have you eaten today? I can't understand what you're saying. So the rabbi says, and the guy says, he gives up. He's like, I don't know what you want from me, Rabbi. So the rabbi looks at him and he says, I heard that's how you were talking to God. So I assume that's your language and that's what you understand. So I came over to you with that. But it's right. We speed through davening. We kind of get to that situation. And it's like, slow down, take your time, so you don't finish everything. Like you said, talk to someone about it. But if you don't finish everything, that's okay. If you don't keep up, that's okay. The idea is synagogue shul is a place where is an environment where you can kind of immerse yourself for whatever time you have. With
The story is a pointed story. Definitely didn't happen with the Bedouins.
Really? I've always heard it in the name of the Badishaver. It's not his type. It's not his type of story because he's always defending.
Not his style, no.
It's not his style at all.
Critical of a Jew. Wouldn't be critical.
Actually, sounds like the Kutzker Rebbe type of story. That's the truth. Those are more like sharp stories, but yeah, the Bedouins is a lot more.
Somebody else. Okay, but the fact is, look, a Jew comes to shul in the morning, and puts on his talis and tefillin, or a woman who just comes and picks up the siddur and says the words, "You appeared in the throne room. You came. You did it." Okay, and for all of us, it's a great sacrifice. The beginning of the day is a very, very precious time of day. Either you had to get up earlier than the rest of the world, or you are stealing this time from work, or something else. I mean, for most people today, that time in the morning, the very important things to get done.
Yeah.
So to take off even half an hour and go to shul, that's a very meaningful sacrifice, offering. And I'm sure it's much appreciated, even if you're whatever. You see, you're there, you're doing your thing. But all I'm saying is that if you're taking that time off already from such a precious time of day, why not do it right?
Right.
You're making an investment already. So instead of putting 5 cents into the investment or $200, but put $200,000, put something for real into it. Make it a real investment, because yes, it is a precious time of day. You should be able to get much more back out of it at that time. It's a time when the kids need to get dressed and taken to school. It's a time that you could be at work first before everybody else and getting stuff done. Or it's a time that you could be sleeping some more. Whatever it is, if you're taking that time out, do something good with it. Invest in it. What do you need to do to invest in it? You need to spend some time learning. What is this world? What is your soul? What is God? What are these things? Learning that and thinking about that and discussing it. You need some time for contemplation, where you get to think, how would I explain this to somebody else? How do I explain it to myself? What is going on? And then time, during the time you have for davening, that you put yourself into it. Learn the meaning of the words for one thing, and why are we using these words. But most of all, it's contemplating that one word, that one goal that you have, that you're going to say you, and mean that. What does that mean? Yeah. We've been sitting here a long time.
Yeah. So I'm pickling in your words. It's
yeah.
It's
look, a lot came out.
Well, I appreciate it, Rabbi Freeman.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were saying?
I was saying now I'm gonna go have lunch.
Yeah.
And check out what's happening with the rest of the world by now. Or maybe I'll play some of my guitar over there. So,
yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And yeah, I only in good times, but thank you so much. Appreciate it. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.